Prime Minister's arrived in Washington ahead of his historic meeting with President Trump. Scott Morrison will be welcomed at a formal ceremony later tonight before holding talks with President Trump at the Oval Office. A state dinner will be held for Mr Morrison tomorrow. It's only the second state dinner the Trump administration has held. It's also the first invitation extended to an Australian Prime Minister since John Howard in 2006. Live now to Sky News host Laura Jays, who's travelling with the Prime Minister. Laura, what's on the agenda for the Prime Minister?
Well, it is a jam-packed agenda, I've got to say, and this is the first of many red carpets that will be rolled out for the Prime Minister. He arrived here in DC just about half an hour ago on Shark 1. He was met by our ambassador, the US ambassador to Australia, Culverhouse, and also a senior politician in the Trump administration. And from here on in, it only gets bigger and better for Scott Morrison, you'd have to say. He'll be afforded a one-on-one meeting in the Oval Office. There'll be further bilateral meetings with the Secretary of Defence, the Secretary of State, the Treasury Secretary, just to name a few. About 8 cabinet ministers, we think, all up. That's what's expected at this stage. And then, as you mentioned, it is the creme de la creme, the state visit. Now, I can't really overstate how important this is. It's only happened once before in the Trump administration, and the last time this happened for an Australian Prime Minister, well, that was back when John Howard was still PM. Scott Morrison is pretty excited about this visit, you'd have to say. He's energised, he's clear on what he wants to talk about. He wants to make it very clear and wants to remind President Trump that Australia pulls its weight. We are not bystanders. We pull our weight defence-wise, strategically and economically. He had a few words to say as he touched down here at the Andrews Air Base.
Well, here we are, the land of the free, the home of the brave, as we just heard. There are no two anthems that you'll hear anywhere in the world when played together that talk about freedom and liberty and all the things we hold dear as Australians. Someone said to me many years ago that if you want to celebrate anniversaries, it's not just a matter of the years rolling by. You've got to invest in those relationships. You've got to take care and you've got to tend them. And it is a great honour and privilege for Jenny and I and our delegation to come here at the very gracious invitation of President Trump and Mrs Trump to do something very important. Firstly, to honour and celebrate 100 years of mateship. And I particularly want to pay tribute to Ambassador Hockey and the tremendous work he's done in his tending of that relationship here in this country and that celebrating of that 100 years of mateship. But it's also about laying the foundation for another 100 years. And whether it's on our defence relationship, our security relationship, our economic relationship, our partnerships around the world, whether in the Middle East or closer to home in the Indo-Pacific, all of these things go together to have one of, I think, the best relationships of any two nations anywhere in the world. There are many larger, I suppose more powerful friends that America has, but they know they do not have a more sure and steadfast friend than Australia. And so I'm looking forward to spending time with our American friends here over the next few days and celebrating our tremendous relationship.
Now, Laura, the request from Labor is that they use this trip to really push about the US-China trade war and see if there can be any progress made in that. Do you think Scott Morrison will be able to make any progress on that in his talks with Donald Trump?
Well, that's a statement of the obvious from Labor in many ways, and Scott Morrison had already signalled that that's what he was going to talk to Donald Trump about, but he'll do it privately. I don't think there'll be any bolshy pushing on within the media, if you like. But look, China's the elephant in the room. You can't avoid that. We just heard Scott Morrison there say that there's no more steadfast friend than America. Well, he went even further in the quotes in the newspaper today, and when he spoke before getting on board Shark 1 and landing here in DC, he described the US as the most important ally, important strategic ally. Now, that is significant as he lands here. I mean, we always talk about the tightrope any Australian leader has to walk between the US and China, but I think Scott Morrison has laid some very important markers. Annalise, it's already pretty busy and we've only been here about half an hour. I just ran through the schedule. We'll be going to Ohio, Chicago, New York, and Ambassador Hockey will be talking to us later in the week. We'll hear from Anthony Pratt. There's a number of Australian who's who that will be going to the state dinner, including Lachlan and Rupert Murdoch, Kerry Stokes, some media barons, but also some pretty impressive Aussies along the way, Annalise. So for now, we'll leave it there, but I'll speak to you very soon.